Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight on Living Mythology, I'm proud to bring you Brian's Drive-In Theater with the one, the only, the legendary Brian Walker. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I am exhausted, Hercules, but otherwise good. How are you doing?
Pretty much the same, exhausted, but otherwise fantastic.
Excellent. As you know from our last talk, which took place last week, I've been on a kind of an extended trip, moving around to several different places in largely Florida and Georgia,
Hmm.
visiting family, visiting three different groups of friends. One group of friends invited us to spend a week with them at Disney World, and that's where I talked with you last week.
Yes,
And
you
I'm
had
here
an
to
audience too, I believe.
we did, and I'm here to tell you that there are lots of people out there who love theme parks and such. I gotta say I'm one of them. I love thrill rides, although they don't always love me. uh, I've ridden some fantastic roller coasters in the past, and hopefully I can still ride a few more in the future. Um, but theme parks are largely the domain of the young because it's strenuous to have fun. it's it's a whole lot of walking. One day, I got more than Greg got more than 27,000 steps in.
Wow.
One day it was something I can't remember. He's got shorter legs than I do. I can't remember what the mileage equivalent of it was, but it was a hike. It was a lot. And the next day he was just boom. I didn't really move much the next day.
27,000 steps will do that to you.
Well, he's been having some. I know that doesn't sound like he's been having some mobility problems, but we have to take more breaks. We have to sit uh, down more, but he can still do it. Anyway, tonight what I wanted to talk about was I wanted to get into a better discussion of public domain films, what public domain means, and the curveballs that a room full of attorneys occasionally throw when, when it comes to movies being in the public domain. As you know, I'm a big staunch believer in free entertainment.
Hmm.
And
Am
you know
I?
what? The pro every time I've been in on a college campus for forever. And the administration likes to profile the incoming class, and for me largely that would have been millennials and Gen Z, right? Well, they tell us that those two groups, more than let's say Gen X like me or the baby boomers, don't really like to pay for entertainment. A lot of their entertainment, whether it should be or not, is free of charge. Whether they're borrowing somebody's Netflix login, which I think is really hard to do anymore. Or my godson, for example, loves to download stuff from God knows where that has a copyright on it, which I keep telling him is a really bad idea, and he keeps telling me that it's perfectly fine. Well, in the likelihood that he'll get caught, he's right about that, but it's not perfectly fine. Copyright is copyright, which is a really difficult thing to wrap your head around. Music copyright's even more difficult
Yes.
than film copyright. I can barely understand film copyright, but music, oh, absolutely not. It is so confusing. Um, this is confusing too. But as we know, we have a lot of films in the public domain. Um, a lot of the movies that are available to us in public domain are available because they were foreign films released in the U.S. and oftentimes those copyrights just weren't renewed. And that was particularly the case before 1976. But there's several different ways that films can enter the public domain. That's the first one. When um, Prior to 1976, if your 28-year-old um, film work, if you had failed to renew the copyright on it, it then passed to the public domain. That changed in 1976 to 47 years. It went up from 28 to 47. And some other things changed as well. And people started getting more litigious, which I get it, but people started getting more litigious about things. And then in 1998, Sonny Bono, at the behest of Disney, essentially, um, uh, got through the in Congress the Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998. Disney wanted this because Steamboat Willie was about to pass into public domain. It was getting to the point where it was about to pass, and they wanted to hold on to it for much longer. So that extended copyright almost to 100 years. It's not quite 100 years. It's something like overall, so something like 95, 96 years. This is really dry stuff. I'll try to speed through it. And it's called the Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act because he's the one that sponsored the bill at the behest of entertainment companies. So I won't get into politics here, but that's where this really comes from. However, if you wait things out long enough, even newer works start passing in the public domain if you're lucky to get old enough, I suppose. Right now, works as of 1928 or earlier, and this is film, by the way, just film, are now public domain. So we're getting into some really the classic silent films like Sunrise with Janet Gaynor and George O'Brien. Really, really good class. It's a too hanky melodrama, affair. But it is a tearjerker, and it does deal with some really adult themes that you don't really think about silent films often addressing. But some silent films were actually, fairly had disturbing plot lines. Could be quite racy, too. In terms of sexual content and such. I mean, it's not like now, but when you think about mores from 100 years ago as compared to now, some of it is pretty progressive. It's pretty modern. Um, anyway, that means that we have a lot of public domain films up until like let's say the mid 1970s. Since then, the only things that have passed through are really old, essentially. So we are dealing with kind of a core group of movies, but there's some great movies that are public domain. For instance, you know who Cary Grant is, right?
Yes, of course.
And what's your opinion? I mean, what do you think of when you think of Cary Grant? You probably think of big studio movie star,
Right.
A-list, very charismatic, handsome. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I really enjoy his performances in movies, but I'm not sure he can really act. Um, I don't know if he tried to tell you the truth. I mean, but he's in some of my favorite movies, and he's fantastic in them. North by Northwest. Oh, that's one of my favorite Hitchcock films. It is fabulous, especially if you can see a great copy on a big screen. It's so cinematic, the way it's shot, and he's wonderful in it as well. But you don't think of him at being. We oftentimes think of public domain movies as being these old kind of crusty B movies from the 30s and 40s that nobody renewed copyright on. That's not always the case, though. I mean, even somebody as A-list as Cary Grant has films in the public domain. One of those is His Girl Friday, and another one is Charade. And you see Charade, His Girl Friday is getting to be it's black and white, and unfortunately, you don't see a whole lot of black and white films anymore on television. Not even really on TBS. Charade, however, another film of his that's in the public domain, is in color. It's a big budget spectacular too. It's a Universal film from 1963. It's got a great cast too. Not only is it Cary Grant, Audrey Hepburn is sort of, I guess, the love interest in it. Although I'll explain that in a minute. Walter Matthau and George Kennedy and James Coburn are in it as well. So it's got some heavy hitters, people who are very talented, who were in lots of movies. It is odd to see Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn together in this movie for one reason. They're supposed to be a couple of sorts, attracted to one another, and it's just not there on screen at all. Now they seem like they genuinely like each other, but it's just it's more like a buddy picture.
Imagine.
Yeah, more like a buddy picture than a romance. And apparently, he was kind of horrified. He was 59 years old, when he was making this movie, and Audrey Hepburn might have been, oh, I don't know, early 30s. And he didn't want to do another film where he was chasing somebody half his age. So they sort of flipped it so that she chased him, but she didn't seem to do it all that effectively, or convincingly might be a better way to put it. But it's a fun film, eminently watchable. But it is in the public domain for a different reason than just forgetting to renew copyright. It was released with an incorrect copyright.
Hmm.
And that happened to a number of movies. And at the time, before 1976, if you forgot to put your copyright on your film, sorry, that was it. And that affected a lot of movie makers, especially novices who, had some great films in them, but they just bungled the business end of it. One of those is a movie that I probably talk about way too much, but I love the film. And since I live in Pittsburgh Metro, it's a film that means a lot to this area. And that's George Romero's Night of the Living Dead,
Yes.
the original one from 1968, which on the day of its release became public domain. They did a last minute title change. I can't remember what the original title was, but that last minute change, they forgot the copyright in it. And that was that. It was a big success, but can you imagine if the movie had been as popular now, with not being royalty free, or not being in the public domain? It's kind of questionable, because one of the reasons that everybody has seen that film is because it is royalty free. It is in the public domain. You see it on all different kinds of platforms. I don't know if you subscribe to any streaming services or not. We probably subscribe to too many. I rarely watch any of them, to tell you the truth. I still like physical media, but I do stream. We do stream quite a bit now that I think about it. But the movies like, let's say, Night of the Living Dead, or William Castle's House on Haunted Hill, those tend to pad out Amazon Prime and Netflix and all of the other streaming services, because they are public domain. Good enough copies, exist so that you can just plop one, down on your streaming service, and you can say, "Look at all the horror movies we have." Yeah, they're all public domain, but look at all the horror movies we have,
And
which you can watch on archive.org, YouTube. You can watch it in so many different areas. The thing I like about archive.org, of course, is that there are no commercials, unlike YouTube, unless you pay YouTube extra money every month.
yeah, they try to push that on you to pay the extra money to remove the
Well,
commercials.
and during the election year, I'm almost ready to pay them, quite honestly, because I do use YouTube a lot, and I am sick to death of seeing the local the state commercials here. They're all disgusting. All of these people are trash, but that's political, and I will not. We won't go down that out. But I don't. What are your thoughts on this? I'm going to posit that if Night of the Living Dead hadn't been public domain, maybe not that many of us might have heard. It might have been released in 1968, and that was just kind of that, maybe just some small niche film, but it's got quite a cult built around
Yes, it does, and it spawned generations of entertainment, including the
the
Evil
whole
Dead,
franchise. Yeah.
the what is that long-running television series based on the comic books? Fear of the Walking Dead, The
Oh,
Walking.
walking. Okay, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I've seen people do like there are ways of taking a non-copyright film, one that's in public domain, and making it your film. All you need to do is alter things in some way, and then your copy becomes copyrightable.
Correct.
So even though the work is in the public domain, your particular copy of it, some people put their little logo on the sides of the screen. Some people do something else. Um, Other people have chopped up public domain movies and made original movies from pieces like a collage. So there are a lot of ways to take these old movies and make them yours.
Another good way is to remove the soundtrack and add a new one.
Right.
You can just redub it with hopefully funnier lines. Uh, it, some I've watched a number of those. Some of them are great. What's Up, Tiger Lily? Woody
That
Allen.
is great. Yeah.
It is one of my favorites, and a movie that's really hard to get a copy of in the U.S. because there's some sort of copyright issue with it. I don't know why. It was released through American International Pictures, and a lot of their movies have some copyright issues, so I don't know who owns what there. Um, which is sad too because it's so corny. Whenever we see a more recent modern comedy, there's a lot of profanity in it and such. And I'm not a goody goody or anything. I like profanity as much as anybody else. But there's something kind of heartwarming about a movie if you watch it that isn't laced with profanity and is still hilarious. And What's Up, Tiger Lily, for me, it has enough of that corny humor that I love. Uh, it is just fascinating, and it's a Japanese film, and I love international movies. I love films that not international movies, but I love films from all different cultures, and Japanese movies are awesome. Uh,
Yes, they are.
I've seen so many of them during my lifetime too, and they're great. They're especially moving out of the late 50s. They're almost all in color, which is great, and they used good color stock. So a lot of even their even copies of the crappier Japanese kids movies and such still pop pretty well because they used good quality film stock. Um, and the movies are fun enough. It's always hard when a movie is dubbed into a different language to know exactly what is going on in the movie. And What's Up, Tiger Lily just removes that entirely. It's a lot of dubs are very inaccurate, and
Yes.
instead of going for content, they're going for lip movement in terms of matching words to lips. So you hear a lot of really clunky sentence structure and phrasing, and you hear that a lot in the peplums, where they will just string prepositional phrases together, especially if somebody's making a longer speech, just to make it match the lips moving. And I mean, that's great. Some of them do a pretty good job with it, but you get no kind of meaning of the plot
Right.
or anything out of it. So it's kind of hard to tell. And that's one of the things I loved about What's Up, Tiger Lily is that they attach this really corny. I mean, I love it. I'm not denigrating it by any means, but it is so corny, but clean as a whistle, except for, I mean, there's a couple of scenes in it that are sexual in nature, and it's not, from Woody Allen. It's just what was in the film. There's a brief scene in a strip club, if I remember correctly, and then there's this ending of it, which was tacked on. With Woody Allen, he's lying down, he's on a lounger or something like that. And China Lee, an actress from the '60s, is just kind of doing I wouldn't call it a strip tease, but kind of a burlesque routine um, while he's talking at the end, which is kind of prophetic, I suppose. But the trying to find the egg salad sandwich recipe, I love the plot line. It's just ridiculous and so funny and so well done. And the voice actors I thought were awesome. Louise Lasser, who was Mary Hartman back in the 70s on the classic soap opera Mary Hartman, Mary
Very
Hartman.
Martin Hartman, yeah.
You ever watch that, by the way?
Oh, I love that. And Fernwood Tonight, I love that.
They were fun. They were good. Well, he and Louise Lasser were married for I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years, around the time that they did What's Up Tiger together. I can't imagine what that coupling was like, but they seemed to have a really good rapport when they worked together. And from what I understand, from what I've read, they're still like in contact. I think she even sometimes goes to his house for holiday parties and things like that, which is kind of odd for somebody you hadn't been married to for 50 some odd years. I think, but I think that's really nice as well. You can agree to disagree and go your separate ways, but you don't have to hate each other.
Very true.
But sometimes hating each other is fun. Some people really like to do it. So,
Very sad but true.
yeah, very sad. Yeah, unfortunately, very true. Going back to Night of the Living Dead, it's street cred, being boosted by the fact that there are terrific copies of it. It's a groundbreaking film, and it became public domain. By the way, when I was collecting Super 8 millimeter films back in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a company out of Illinois called Niles Film, and they specialized in public domain films to sell to the public. And I don't know that they ever sold anything that did have that did have a copyright on practically their entire catalog. It's all public domain stuff. They made more money off of it, and they could sell the product cheaper too. Super 8 millimeter film was horribly expensive. I mean, you think back to what VHS used to cost, like back in the 80s. I mean, the tapes were outrageous. The players were incredibly expensive. Um,
Yeah, I remember my first player. It cost between $400 and $500, and my first tape was Conan the Barbarian. That cost $80 new.
yeah. Well, on Super 8 millimeter or 16 millimeter film, it would have cost many times more than $80. Uh, it was just an expensive format. A very fun one, for me because I was a hobbyist. But I did buy some stuff from Miles. One of the films that I bought a complete film. It was a Universal. Uh, I think. Well, I'm not sure it was Universal, but it was a film called Private Buckaroo. It was a World War II kind of feel good musical from the early 40s. The Andrews sisters are in it. Dick Foran. There's not a whole lot going on in the movie, to tell you the truth, but it's kind of fun to see the wartime. Let's let's beat the Nazis sort of thing. Although they didn't really mention that, it was just all good escapism, good clean fun. But Niall sold other films. For example, I think I briefly mentioned His Girl Friday. That was one of the films that they used to push because they did have a decent copy of it. Another film that they used to sell from Niles was Nothing Sacred, um, and that's a Carol Lombard and Frederick March movie. Carol Lombard, I hate to say it, is probably now more famous for widowing Clark Gable than for her own career, and that's a shame because she sort of invented screwball comedies with her performances in the 1930s. She was great. And if you like films such as, let's say, What's Up Doc or Thoroughly Modern Millie, a lot of that really is based on those Carol Lombard films and how kind of crazy they were and such. And Nothing Sacred was also Carol Lombard's only Technicolor film. So, and for those people who might not know, she was killed in a plane crash in early 1942 while she was on a trip selling war bonds,
Mm.
which she had been very good at. She had sold many times more than what they were hoping that she could. Um, but unfortunately, she was killed in a plane crash, and Like I said, the fact that that did happen, and the fact that she kind of turned Clark Gable's life upside down because they hadn't been married very long, um, and they were a very public couple. Um, we tend to think of that as being a recent thing, but it's not. Um, for example, I don't know how much you follow current film, television, sports, all of that.
Not very much.
But the the media made a whole lot of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce um, dating and such, almost to the point of being obtrusive. I read an interview with him once, and he said that he was in Australia. He'd flown to Australia to see her while she was on tour down there, and they had gone to a zoo, and there were helicopters in the air with paparazzi in them over top of
Oh,
them.
wow.
And he said that uh, I would have freaked right on out and gotten on the. I would have just left, just forget this relationship. But he said that she had this ability to tune it out. I can't imagine. She must be really good at it because that would be difficult with helicopters in the air.
I would imagine so.
Anyway, I think I know why Nothing Sacred went into the public domain. Um, some films are kind of hard to track, and if you are looking for a comprehensive list of films that are in public domain, good luck because sometimes people don't agree on what is public domain and what is not. Nothing Sacred definitely is. It entered public domain in 1965, 28 years after it was released, because David O. Selznick, the copyright holder, failed to renew copyright on it because he died. He just happened
That's a good reason.
he died right there, and he was at that time he was married to Jennifer Jones, big movie star from the 40s and 50s, and yeah, I guess it just got lost in the shuffle, you know. But Jennifer Jones, well, going back to David O. Selznick, I mean, he was the producer of Gone with the Wind. His father-in-law was Louis B. Mayer um, from MGM. His first, well, I should say, the original wife, the original father-in-law. That is, he was married to Louis B. Mayer's daughter Irene for quite close to 20 years or so. It was his first wife. However, he took up with Jennifer Jones in the mid 1940s, and Jennifer Jones was a wonderful actress. She's the mother of Robert Walker Jr., as a matter of fact, who was in a lot of films in the 60s and 70s. He's in everything from Beware the Blob on to Empire of the Ants. He did a lot of television. He's in Pretty Maids All in a Row. Uh, those are the ones that stand out anyway. No, I'm sorry. I completely blew that. I'm thinking of John David Carson, not
Okay.
uh, he is she is the mother of Robert Walker Jr., not John David Carson. Sorry. I'm weary from being on the road. I'm getting confused, and I'm old. Because Jennifer Jones had been married to Robert Walker, the screen actor who died tragically young, but was in some terrific films. My favorite Robert Walker films, Strangers on a Train. I don't know if you've ever seen it or not.
No.
Okay, it's got a terrific plot. I won't give away too much of it. Robert Walker and Farley Granger meet on a train ride, and they're both having some issues, and they're just in general talking about them. Farley Granger has a wife he'd like to shed because he's met this other woman and he wants to get married to her. And his wife is played by Casey Rogers from Bewitched. She was the second Mrs. Tate, but here she's a lot younger. Um, and Robert Walker, um, in another Bewitched tie-in, would like for his mother to be rubbed out. And his mother is portrayed by Marion Lorne, who was Aunt Clara on Bewitched. So interesting that they had that tie, but so
Yeah.
many, it's kind of odd. I don't know how that happened, but who knows? anyway, well, Robert Walker buys into it more than Farley Granger buys into it, and he murders uh, Farley Granger's wife, who was Casey Rogers, who was actually had a different name at the time. She had, I think, Laura Elliott was her screen name. In the, I can't remember. I think it was Laura Elliott. Now that I think about it. Anyway, and that's where the movie begins. Is just Robert Walker is like, okay, I did mine. Now you got to do yours. It's a great plot for a movie. And it's been used over and over again, to tell you the truth now. But the originals, for me, it's always the greatest. Now, one movie that is really complex in terms of copyright um, is It's a Wonderful Life. Not my favorite Christmas movie, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. It's a Wonderful Life is a Frank Capra film, and it's got a really checkered, um, well, not a checkered past, but sort of a checkered copyright on it. The film is public domain, yes, but the story is not. The story still has a copyright, and that's what keeps it from being truly public domain, meaning that anybody can put it on their platform royalty free. Um, so there's so many different ways that films enter the public domain. I've tried to tried to discuss some of the more familiar ways. Something you mentioned a little earlier, though, is a pretty good segue into colorization. You mentioned that you can change a public domain work, and then if you can change it in some way, then you can slap your own copyright on it and say, "Well, this is mine. I own it."
Right.
And that's one of the things that happened starting in the 1980s with colorization. For whatever reason, that there are people out there who must really hate black and white because they want to take a classic black and white movie and colorize it. Which, I mean, think about some of your favorite black and white movies. For me, one of those is Arsenic and Old Lace, with Cary Grant, as a matter of fact. Hilarious movie, and he's spectacular at it. It might be his best performance. Um, but I can't imagine seeing that in color. It's supposed to be, it's the way I've always seen it. I don't want to see it in color. But if you do colorize it, but that film's not a public domain film. But if you do colorize a public domain film, that means that you indeed can slap a copyright on it. And that's happened countless times to public domain movies. Night of the Living Dead, I don't know how many different colorizations that have been done to it, and they're all lousy. And there again, that's another movie that's just not supposed to be in color. If they'd wanted it to be in color in 1968, I'm sure they would have shot it in color. It
That's
was its
an interesting point because some creators like to change their work, like George Lucas did that with Star Wars. He reissued the
which I
entire
don't agree with either, but yeah.
trilogy, and if you never saw the original, it was better, with the changes in there, but it wasn't the same movie that you saw. So that brought up a lot of questions as to what right do people have, even creators, to change a work of art? And when does it stop being the same work of art and become something different?
Well, unfortunately, Lucas owns it, so he can do what he wants to do with it. So,
There you go.
and,
Now
and
Disney owns it.
if you own all the toys in the sandbox, then everything goes your way. Um, I I, under, I understand, especially in the last 50 years, where uh, mores, attitudes toward women, attitudes toward gender, certainly race, back then were different than they are now, and some of them can be kind of grating. They can be kind of offensive. I guess I could understand the impulse in wanting to correct that. On the other hand, I'm kind of a purist, and I don't want you to change the movie that I remember from
Right.
whenever it was that I saw it. I'd like to see the original because these are historical documents too. Now, if you want to do, an update on your work, great. But can we keep the old one? Can, can, can you have that available, somewhere, for the rest of us as well?
Label the new one newfangled or
Yeah,
reinvented.
or not so pig-headed or something like that.
Go.
And you, like I said, I understand the impulse to want to do it, but I wish the opportunity were there more often to see the original. And a lot of people are against colorization. Um, in fact, Orson Welles, who died in 1986, was so afraid that Citizen Kane was going to be colorized that he did everything that he could in his power to make sure that it would be. Frank Capra initially was excited about having It's a Wonderful Life colorized because he thought that it would give the film kind of a new life. You had already been on television a million times, but colorizing it probably would give it a lift. I'd like to see what they would have done, with Pottersville or whatever the hell that place was called. I really don't like It's a Wonderful Life. It's really bleak, and it's Christmas movies are supposed to be uplifting, not depressing. Um, I mean, it is uplifting at the end. It's always nice to see Donna Reed in a movie, but I I just never was a big fan of it. I like Miracle on 34th Street way better. It's not public domain, however. There aren't too many holiday movies that are public domain, interestingly. As many Christmas movies have been made over the years, you would think that one would be, or more would be public domain. But right now, all we've really got is It's a Wonderful Life. And there again, it is and it's not. And Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
That's not public domain either.
Oh, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians is public domain. Most
Okay.
definitely. Oh, yeah. Anything that you remember seeing in a Dollar Tree 20 years ago on on DVD in one of those really thin cases,
Yes,
public domain.
I miss those days. I used to love going to dollar stores and finding uh, lots of those things, movies I never heard of, and buying them for $1. That was a great adventure.
Yeah, one year I had to do stockings for my student workers, and I had like 10 of them or something like that. This was probably 20 years ago. So I went to the Dollar Tree, and I was just grabbing, like, theater candy and stuff like that. And I thought, well, gosh, if I'm buying them theater candy, I should buy them a movie. But everything's done on a budget. So I went there and loaded up. I got the brain that wouldn't die, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, I think Night of the Living Dead was one of them too. So everybody got a really a public domain movie for Christmas that year. Of course, that was when more of us were using DVDs, and that was a long time.
I still use DVDs. I
Well, I
don't.
do too, but I would be willing to bet that an 18-year-old now probably doesn't have a DVD player.
Yeah, everything's streaming now.
Yeah. And I've probably said this before as well, but save up your money because when DVD players go out of production, you're going to want to buy a stack of
Yeah,
them.
you'll have to buy everything else again on streaming or on 4Q or whatever, 4K, or whatever formats they're publishing in.
My eyes don't really work well enough to distinguish among some of the different formats. I mean, it's always supposed to be sharper, faster, more clarity, and I'm like, yeah, it looks the same as it did last time I saw it. So
And it's a gimmick because I remember when they were touting DVDs on VHS, they showed you on VHS what DVD looks like. And it's like if they could show you on VHS what DVD looks like, why have DVD? Why not just improve the images on the VHS tape? And then with Blu-ray, it was the same thing. This is how it looks like on a DVD, and this is how it looks like on Blu-ray. Well, if you could show me what Blu-ray looks like on a DVD, then you could obviously improve the quality of the picture on the DVD and do away and not have the Blu-ray.
Yeah, but if you keep updating the format, then you can keep selling people the same movie over and over again.
Over and over again. Yes.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I bought copies of some movies. Yeah, you move from VHS and then you go to DVD and then you see the Blu-ray of, we bought a Blu-ray of Bullet. I don't know, this has probably been a long time ago at this point, but we already had these other copies of Bullet. I'm like, why did we do this? But to tell you the truth, Bullet with Steve McQueen looks fantastic in Blu-ray,
There you go.
and it is. I like all kinds of movies, and it probably makes, being at the drive-in probably makes it seem like all I watch are B films, and that's not true. I mean, I do like good quality films from all eras.
Yeah, I like a lot of films from all eras, and even though I have a very soft spot for sword and sandal cinema, ergo sword and sandal cinema, I like movies from all times too, and television shows. I like the really old ones. I like the really new ones. Uh, I love the art of the moving picture.
Yeah, me too. And I'm afraid it's one that has seen its best days. Um, as we get move away from theaters and everything just coming into your home through the central monitor or whatever you're watching it on. It doesn't have to be a monitor even at that. You could be watching it on your phone or your laptop or your iPad, what have you. As we move to that, losing. I think we're losing some cinematography. I think we're losing real movie stars. I don't think we're going to see any more of those. Everything's going to be TV. I'm not denigrating television or anything like that. There's been plenty of quality television programming, but films were always different. They were always bigger, more expensive, um, better crew, better actors, and you you're just not going to see that anymore.
Yeah, I see many changes to the motion picture industry, and
Mm.
some of them are very disturbing to me because they seem to be stifling creativity and
Oh God, they don't want anything
expression.
creative. Oh, creativity doesn't sell. What they want to do is to sell you something you've already bought, kind of like me and the movie Bullet. Well, they do. They just they'll take a plot from a classic film, and then they update it and change a few names, and it's like, you see it, and you're like, I've already seen this movie 10 times. Don't need to see it again with these people I don't even know who they are.
Movie Arena with Roger Corman.
Yes.
That's been remade a few times by Roger Corman using different.
Well, AIP and Corman. Oh my God! As we all know, he passed away. A couple of or about 6 weeks ago, I think. Not that long ago, however. Corman, he did it his whole career. He would do a movie in the 50s that he would then update in the 60s and then
Yes,
do it again in the 70s. And AIP, which and Corman, it kind of it was raised at AIP, I suppose. But at American International Pictures, they did it countless times. They would change the name and oftentimes keep the same scripts because
yes.
because they didn't want to pay a screenwriter because they already had this old script.
I, I, because of the Sword and Sandal, I got a few gladiator movies from different times, and I was watching one of them, and it wasn't called the same thing as the ones I'd seen before, but it was the exact same movie, the same script, the same characters, just different people playing them in a different title to the movie.
Yep. Well, seeing seeing that, it's odd to think of how prophetic Roger Corman and American International Pictures were, but that sort of thing goes on today all the time. We'll well look at television, for example, and I watch very little TV. I just don't have patience for it. But how many shows are on now that are revivals of shows from 30 or 40 years ago? They keep bringing this crap around again. Just let it go. We would all like to have some new entertainment. There are plenty of smart, creative people out there. There are plenty of people out there who know how to act. Let's bring them back together again and, and do something. I'm so tired of I just hate to see what's happened to film. It's and I'm so disenfranchised about it. I haven't been in a theater in more than 4 years.
We used to go to the theater quite often. Theater was part of our date night. Every month we had a date night. We'd celebrate each other at other times, not just on date night. But we had like a date night. We go see a movie, then we go to our favorite Mexican restaurant, and that was what we did. And mostly it was just my wife and myself. Sometimes if it was a movie our son wanted to see, which was very rare, that he wanted to see a movie that we wanted to see, but we'd make it a family thing. And all the movie theaters that are nearby closed down within a year. And it might have started with the pandemic, but it continued past the pandemic. And now we
It's
have to go to a mall, like a mega mall, to go watch a movie. And we haven't really done so enthusiastically. It's like, well, we might as well wait a month or two and it'll come out, on DVD or on streaming and watch it at home.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of local theaters, and they're almost all gone. It's a shame. The one or two screen theaters, they just can't make it. Even the big ones like Regal and AMC are struggling in certain areas. We've got a couple of mall like um, megaplexes here. One is at the mall. Well, the other each we have two different. Well, we have several different shopping centers, but only two have theaters. We used to have theaters downtown, but one by one they went away, and never to return. Unfortunately, all the drive-ins are gone from this immediate area. In southwestern Pennsylvania, however, there are still probably about 2 dozen drive-ins, um, all within about an hour's drive of me. Um,
What do you
so
think of the custom now of reviving the dead and having them be in films?
that is creepy as hell.
Isn't it?
I well, and this isn't exactly a movie, but I was Greg watches way too much television, and sometimes when I was passing by, I'll see what he's watching, and there was a commercial on TV for some product being promoted by Billy Mays, the commercial pitchman. He died something like 15 years ago. And I was just like, oh my God, but you're dead.
Yeah,
I
with
mean,
AI, they can
reanimated
uh,
or,
yeah, they with AI now they can duplicate anybody and use their voice, a recreation of their voice. So
oh
it's
yeah, it is creepy. I'm sorry. There again, we have plenty of creative, talented people. Can't we just use them? They would love to work for a paycheck. I I don't get it.
but you could put Cary Grant and Gary Cooper and Bogart and have them star in things.
Oh no, 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 no,
Star
no.
Wars did that with the latest trilogy. Carrie Fisher died, and they put her in the movie, and Moff Tarkin, I forget the actor that played a famous actor, he died. And they put him in the movie, so it's already been pioneered. And Yeah, I don't want that at that point. I want to see new people also.
Well, I want to see new people. I want to see new plots. Um, try. How about a character study? We don't see those much anymore. Even horror films, they've just gotten really routine. There for a while, they just kept getting gorier and gorier and gorier until they got boring. There's got to be a motivation for the gore. It can't just be, a chainsaw stuck in the back of a teenager for 2 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so well, maybe that means we need to go out and make our own.
I was just thinking the same thing. Maybe we should do that.
It's not a bad idea. I can't act, and my writing skills have probably deteriorated at this point.
But you have presence, and you write very well.
Well, I'm kind of like Cary Grant in that I'm not I'm not a very good actor, but I'm good at what I do.
There you go. So if you do a movie, then you'll be good at what you do.
There you go. Yeah, you just for some actors like Cary Grant, they just have to have charisma, which he did, in spades. He could he helmed a lot of movies and was great in all of them, really. Big star even today. I mean, he's been gone for many many years, but close to 40 years. But still a big star. And we just don't have any anymore. I'd be at a loss to tell you the name of one movie star now. You can't either, see?
My allergies are acting up something awful, so I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I guess the movie stars now would be people who are in these mega franchise, the Marvel or the DC.
Well,
The
I
the
was
more
thinking
well-known people are appearing in those movies.
Ben Affleck, Brad Pitt. I don't. Does George Clooney still make movies?
I don't know,
I
but
don't know. I
but
mean, does he still act in them? I think he does make movies.
Brad Pitt and Ben Affleck have been in superhero films also.
Mhm. They're both getting up there too. I think Brad Pitt's what, about 60? I think he looks great for his
Youthful
age.
60, yes,
He looks really good for his age. It helps to have been good looking when you're young.
and athletic, yes.
It really does. You know? Because if you're good looking when you're young, and if you take care of yourself and have some nips and tucks and stay in really good shape, which is difficult if not impossible for most of us. Yeah, you can still look good at 60, and he does. He looks great.
Before we run out of time, um, I'm doing something and I've invited all the hosts of our programs if they want to participate.
Okay.
It's for people who are trying to get back in shape or trying to get back their health and it's a show called Lions of Olympus.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
And
What, tell
there's
me more about it.
sure there's no right or wrong, so it's not trying to sell anybody a particular way of doing things. It's like everybody's gym buddies. And we share what our particular like right now I'm on the lion diet, which is means I only eat meat. And so far it's not a magic pill, it's not a magic diet, but I have seen some improvement. Like my brain fog is lifted, uh,
Really?
my skin where I had dry spots is clearing up, and my neuropathy is much less, and
Huh.
it's are miraculous because it in all the years I've tried different things, nothing seemed to work. But eating ruminant meat seems to be doing it for me and other people. And I
Hmm.
went on this diet because of my autoimmune conditions, my diabetes and my arthritis. So my diabetes blood sugar level is down and so forth. Now,
Oh, good.
Michael Barussi, to give another example, he's a vegan, so he's not eating meat or going to eat meat. So he shares what he does, for very similar getting older type conditions and so forth. And so again, it's just like people sharing what their journeys, their successes, their failures, their goals, and things like that. And then I do a lot of things in the community. So if anybody wants to do community things, I have places where they could do that in an actual community. Or if they want to do it in their own community, that's fine too. There's no restriction to it. It's just, basically share your journey, share your adventures, and with other people who are on the same journey but having different adventures. And because it's lions, we're also focusing on the well-being of cats, everything from actual lions to kitty cats. So everyone I know who's a host either has cats or had cats or loves cats, or is involved in cat rescue or rehabilitating stray cats or whatever, or works with shelters as a volunteer. So it'll be about humans and cats and our mutual experience here and how we can make things better for both types of beings.
Well, they say that pets take on the traits of their masters, and I don't know where that gets me with the two cats that we have. But yeah, I have a cat. And sure, I mean, I'm perilously close to 60 at this point. Um, and it is an adventure to sort of watch yourself age and
Yes.
do everything that you possibly can to try to slow it down. Um, I think that I really think that no one diet is good for everyone,
Me
across the
too.
board. I think that a lot of it does depend on what your body needs. That's why I'm really interested in this lion diet. I would hate the diet. I mean, I would hate the actual food. And I love to eat. Well,
Me too.
got about 25 extra pounds here to convince you of that.
It doesn't show.
Um,
You
but
hide.
no, I mean, I like to eat. Heck, for the last month, we've been eating all kinds of seafood and such. But we haven't been overeating or anything. We did have some ice cream here and there. I love black cherry, pistachio, mint chocolate chips, a big favorite of mine too. Any of the fruits flavor, like strawberry, I'm a big strawberry fan.
That's my bane, French vanilla.
Oh, okay. All right. I like vanilla too. It's a good, if you don't know what to order, always go with vanilla. It'll be fine in terms of ice cream. But
Now,
yeah, I certainly understand. I understand the struggle here greatly, and what the things that I have found, diet wise, anything that is artificial is really, really not good for you. Any artificial sweetener is horrible. Um, Way worse than actual sugar would be. And I know a lot of people argue, well, I'm diabetic, blah, blah, blah. Well, then just don't eat anything sweet, because the artificial sweeteners are god awful. I got away, I'm kind of back into them now, unfortunately, but I got away from them last fall. And I noticed after a few weeks that I felt so much better. I had more energy. There again, you mentioned a mental fog and you achieving some clarity with your current diet. I found the same thing, just getting away from, NutraSweet, the artificial sweeteners. They just and they don't taste good either. I mean, I like real, regular, old white white sugar, brown sugar is really good too. Maple syrup. There are lots of different ways to
so
sweeten.
you'll have no difficulty talking about this. I will invite you to the next panel.
All right, very good, very good.
And how can people reach you? I found Brian's Drive-In Theater over a quarter of a century ago. I thought I came into it late, but actually came in the beginning days. And I've shared that I used to copy every single page, and I had a loose leaf binder because I didn't know how long it would be up. Because back there, the cool things would appear and then disappear or be abandoned. And the Drive-In Theater persevered, and it's still here, and it's an actual shrine to certain types of movies in certain eras of time. So, how can people find you, and how can they enter the wonderful world of movies that you bring to us?
Well, for I've been online for 26 years at briansdrivintheater.com. I profile hundreds of B movie actors and the movies that they starred in. So there are lots of static photos, but we also have a number of public domain films. We also have public domain television episodes and trailers for these actors. Some actors have all three, some just have a combination. There are a few on the website for which I don't have any access to anything public domain, but that's really rare. It's fewer than about 10 of the hundreds of people on the website. You can also interact with me on social media. I'm really only on Facebook anymore. I've kind of given up on X for a while. Just there's just nothing going on over there. But Facebook seems to be the best medium for me. Don't be surprised if I do maybe finally go back to Instagram. I had a bad experience with them, but I may go back to it.
Thank you so very much, Brian. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow, where we'll continue with amusement parks part two.
Yes,
Uh,
we will.
and then on Sunday, if you're free, there's the UFO panel.
Okay, I'll have to check my calendar.
Very good. Have a wonderful evening. This will be up tomorrow early in the day.
Good night, Hercules.
Good night, Brian, and good night, dear audience. Until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures.